Esta conferencia comenzará a grabarse.
Good morning, everyone. This is today we are starting a new series, okay? And I have some expectation on what will happen during this series, because it's not very well or very defined on the subjects, and it's not so easy to understand as our previous one. So we need to explore more general ideas about what does means power up and what does means flagship. And so we need to be especially creative, and as you can see also by the list of attendance, we will not be so much people, or yes, perhaps, but in my mind, it's easier if we have a clear focus, and it's less easy to call attendance as much generic as you are. Okay. Anyway, we will see. We start with the RRF flagships, and the first one is Power Up. Nina Hoffman has prepared some slides about the flagships, and I will let her comment on them. So, Nina, can I pass you the slides?
Yes, good morning, everyone. You can just leave them on the screen and you can click forward. We were thinking about how to approach the subject, and we have prepared some material. This slide that you see comes from Ulla Engelmann from the Commission, who at the end of September presented us the Recovery and Resilience Facility with the following guiding principles that should be considered for the national recovery and resilience plans. And we see here as the guiding principles environment, productivity, sustainability, and fairness that all should contribute to the competitive sustainability for our economy. And based on these guiding principles, Ulla told us that we will have 7 flagship areas that you will see in the next slide. So we have Power Up, that we wanted to start with our series today, which centers around clean technologies and renewables. We have Renovate, which will focus on energy efficiency of buildings. Recharge and Refuel, one that already came up in our session about mobility when we talked about sustainable transport, and charging stations might be one of the possibilities of projects that fall under this flagship area. We will have Connect, so the rollout of rapid broadband services. Modernize, which is about digitization. Here also mentioned the public administration. Scale Up, here as a center it says data cloud capacities and sustainable processes. And the final, Rescaling and Upskilling, one topic that we've already discussed also a lot in our webinars here, the education training to support digital skills. These short explanations here below the flagship areas are topics to consider, but they're not exclusive. We see also more possibilities and more topics under these different flagship areas. And when we look at Power Up, our topic for today, we see in the annual growth strategy for 2021 the following description. So we have future-proof clean technologies should be front-loaded, and the development and use of renewables should be accelerated, as well as the integration through modernized networks and enhanced interconnectivity. The flagship will lay the foundation for hydrogen-led markets in Europe and the related infrastructure. So different points here that are also highlighted, and there are also clear aims that are being highlighted in the annual growth strategy. saying that this flagship aims to support the building and sector integration of almost 40% of the 500 gigawatt of renewable power generation needed by 2030. The support the installment of 6 gigawatts of electrolyzer capacity and the production and transportation of 1 million tons of renewable hydrogen across the EU by 2025. So very clear numbers and aims highlighted that should be achieved with the help of this flagship. And can you go to the next? Yes. So when we talk about the investment in reform that should be done through the Recovery and Resilience Facility, it might also be interesting to look at what does that actually mean. And we've already seen that the country analysis from the European semester will also play an important role when drafting the national recovery plans. So the investment and the reform also in this flagship, correct me if I don't understand correctly, but that should also always be on the national baseline. So what is the situation in the countries, and what are the recommendations for the European semester, so that all the project in investment is also in line with the development of each country. And it should also facilitate the green and digital transition and strengthen the growth potential, job creation, economic and social resilience of the member states. So the green and digital transition and the resilience that we have been talking about as 3 major steps that are also should be taken into consideration and that are somehow transversal to the investment through the RRF. And also what I thought was very interesting, where can we do the investments? So in the Q&A on the RRF, we find it can be made on fixed capital, on human capital, and in natural capital. So we can, with fixed capital, we can talk about investments in infrastructure, buildings, but also some intangibles like research, development, patents, and software. Human capital refers to health, social protection, education, training, and skilling as well. And then we have the natural capital, the share of renewable natural resources, protecting and restoring the environment, and by mitigating, adapting to climate change. And all of the investment and the reform through the RRF should have, as we find here, lasting improvement to the functioning of markets, institution structures, public administration or relevant policies, as well as the green and digital transitions that we were discussing for the several weeks. And this also reflects in the templates that we find for the preparation of the recovery plans. That also Morgan Guillou from DG Grow showed us a couple of seminars ago. So for the different flagship areas, what there is to define is the national baseline, then what kind of investments and reforms do we want, or what is aimed at for the Power Up flagship and for the other flagships, and which are the expected contribution to reach the EU objectives. You find this in the draft templates for the member states for the national recovery plans, also many other tables, but this one here about the flagship is about the flagship areas. And this is a little bit the context in which we want to discuss with you what can we propose for the flagship areas.
Thank you very much, Nina. This is not very clear for many of our public responsibles, at least here in Spain. We have found that how the RRF is presented is not so well known, okay? And it's in our hands to help them, at least to propose them, okay? And I understand that in this case, Power Up is very clearly related to the facilities for renewables. And there are clusters working on that area. I don't know if any of the attendants today is working on that in renewables. No, I don't hear anybody. So that's important to know. Okay, so we should not focus so much on this concrete area. I propose you to speak about the flagships in general and the proposals for the recovery plan. One question that has been discussed here in Spain during the last weeks, and that is for me very important, and I want to share with you, is about what is to be supported in the plans. Okay, there is a strong opinion or reality here at least in Spain around the SMEs. And the general idea is SMEs needs first to survive to the next months, years, okay, and later to grow. And the question is, can these plans use to help them to survive? Because as we read, this is not the goal of this funding. And the goal is not to help them to survive, but to make investments with a long-term impact. How to mix both is an excellent question, because the problem, as I see it, is that these kind of plans are easier, far easier, for the big companies to be involved. Okay, for the government it's easier to speak with the big companies, and for the big companies it's easier to invest the private side of the investment, okay, and to be involved on that funding and to present proposals. Okay, but you know, here at least here in Spain, I know that in other countries we have a not very strong SME structure. In fact, most of our SMEs are very small, less than 10 employees. Okay, and those are the companies that are suffering the most. How can we really involve them in this kind of projects? How can we organize the proposals in order to facilitate their growth, but also their survival? And this, I think this is one of the key questions that we as clusters can or should approach. And I know that there are clusters in, I have references, I don't want to give names, okay? I know that there are clusters that are working on that kind of analysis, okay? How our members are suffering, how can they grow? It's more difficult to say how can they participate in these funding schemes. Somebody wants to comment on that? Any reference or idea?
Antonio, can I?
Hello,
Good
for sure.
morning. Good morning, Joel. I think the points you mentioned now, you are perfectly right. This is the main issue, in my view, to the correlation between the SME and the big companies. Because indeed the issue is clear, and we understand the capacity of the big companies to invest just into the directions that were presented. And to me, the answer is also obvious. The answer is through clusters, because clusters are those instruments that could bring together the capacity of the big companies and the perspective of the SMEs, because when we speak about SMEs, of course, first of all, it is about social impact and social economy. And that is why clusters are the best instrument to be used in order to bring together big companies and the small, medium enterprises. As regards the situation in Moldova, for example, is the same situation. It is even worse than in Spain, because we understand we are lagging behind in terms of development of industry. But of course, the biggest number of enterprises refer to the small and medium enterprises. Therefore, we would strongly recommend to allocate some space also for the enterprises from neighborhood countries, including Republic of Moldova, and also through clusters, of course. So we support your idea and your conception, and we just need to go further to understand how can we promote clusters. This is just a comment.
That's the next question. What kind of projects can cluster propose, for example, for Power Up? Okay, because the big investments usually are not in our hands. We are able to work usually in not so big ones. Okay, but perhaps we need to grow. Perhaps we need to have another approaches, or to evolve if you want. Okay.
Yes, and when speaking about the capacity of clusters to bring together these different types of companies, here we need to bear in mind that small and medium enterprises, they are very useful in social terms, just because we understand they are promoting the social economy, but also they are very important in terms of innovation, because small and medium enterprises have their specific role in the innovation process. And this is acknowledged by the big companies also. So big companies themselves, they need so small and medium enterprises. But you know, here is the fight between the economic power and the economic interests. It's kind of lobbyism and so on. And that is why clusters are the best instrument to bring together these types of enterprises, to my view.
I know, for example, of a project that is presented by one regional government here in Spain through 4 clusters, and the global budget of this project is 146 millions. It's a lot. Okay, half of them are going to be spent during the first years. Okay, so it's possible, but it's not usual, and I think that is a very interesting reference, how to create so big projects, so big projects from our cluster organizations. And I would like to have reference on that, if somebody wants to share.
Yes, Antonio. Antonio, I'd like to say something about what's going on in Portugal in the Power App. The Portuguese report was presented last week, in Brussels, and it contains 3 dimensions: the decarbonization of the economy, the bioeconomy, and something that is becoming very, very polemical here, that is the hydrogen economy. And what it seems is that for these areas, bioeconomy, hydrogen economy, and the decarbonizations, it will be very difficult for the small and medium companies to participate because we are speaking about huge investments, and they demand, most of them, the participation of the big companies, the multinationals. So I think that the only way for the SMEs to participate in this kind of projects will be to make, in some case, some contracts and some partnerships with the big companies and the universities, so that they can apport some knowledge and some contribution to the big projects that are being developed.
That could be another approach to make some public plea or request to include small medium companies on the projects, to link the big investment with them. But as far as I know, that is not a request from our governments. I understand that it's also far more complicated, okay? But the reality is I don't have references on that, you know. And I don't know if we could create those references or look for them and share them if there are, okay? But I see a risk, a real risk on not involving SMEs in the European recovery plans. As far as I am receiving information, that is the case. Mostly, we are involving big corporations that have the power to invest. Patrick, are you there?
Yes, good morning, Antonio.
Bonjour. I don't know if you can share with us what is the approach there in your area. Have you been able to propose ideas that are included in your recovery plans?
Yes, we are currently all the cluster in France are very much involved in let's say providing a beyond ID project and within the recovery plan. Regarding the flagship area from the European Commission, frankly speaking, is as far as I know, we have does not yet reach let's say the connection with our national recovery plan. But I will after this session, I will search from the latest information on it, how these areas will be integrated in the national recovery plan. But from the cluster side, we are working on connecting, as you said, high potential project for a long-term project for recovery to the national plans.
How do you involve the SMEs, or you work mainly with the big companies? How are you?
Well, I think yes, SMEs is clearly a priority, especially in the time being. There are, I think, for each of us, for each cluster, there are key stakeholders. We have ongoing from the past. We have working group on our key strategic areas. So we are connecting this ecosystem, including SMEs, to the current challenges and current instruments. We have one in our field, particular field. We are working a lot on sustainability and circular economy issues for recycling, and we had in the past a different group working on, and it has been included very much in the recovery plan in our case, how to in the future to implement technologies, value, let's say, business model for a better, let's say, increase sustainability. So this is our current key topics. So SMEs are of course of high priority, is clear.
I am thinking about referencing on policy instruments that could help us to facilitate the involvement of the SMEs. Meaning,
Yes,
what kind of schemes from the funding can help us to involve them? You know.
Yes, there is a fear from some SMEs that all the funding from the recovery plan, the European or national plan, will be streamlined to big companies, and when SMEs will, let's say, come in to the plan, there will be no, either they will miss the deadline or they will come too late. So I think it's a really let's say key action of clusters to not to waste time with this, not to waste time, and help SMEs to step into these programs. There are, I think it's in each country, could be maybe the same. There is a very short-term deadline for recovery calls, and of course, big companies are well organized for it, and SMEs, we have to help them not to come too late.
Yeah, I mean,
in France, the next among the key deadline we have for 2020 is November 17, where there is a big deadline for a lot of strategic area and within the recovery plan. So it requires to be quick, and to as a cluster, I think we need to help the relevant company, SMEs, to not to miss it.
You said November 17?
Yes, November 17.
You have an open call from your government for proposals? Is that
yes,
what it is?
Yes.
I didn't know
yes.
that. You share the reference on the chat, if you don't mind?
Yes, of course.
Just to, with the best intention, is just to copy it. Okay, it's good to know, because as far as I know, here in Spain there is no open call for ideas, as far as I know. So the point is, because we are, at least idea is building proposals, okay, for the governments. But one of the problems that they say is what kind of policies they don't know, or they say they don't know about how can they distribute the money, or what kind of policy instruments they can use. This is very good reference. Sorry for the question, but BPI France is a agency from your government?
This is a governmental agency for innovation. So they are operator of public funding for innovation, and they are among the key stakeholders, the key operator for the recovery plan in France. There are other agencies leading calls and organizing the process, but BPI is among the main one.
Excellent reference. Thank you. Very good.
Thank you.
So this is important information for us as a reference. Yes, yes. Thank you very much, Patrick. So I was saying, for example, now we are rating proposals for our government, but one of the problems is that the SMEs usually have small projects, and they want projects with big numbers. And one model could be the cascade funding through clusters. Okay, it could be done through those models. But I would like to know if, from your experience, you see other possibilities.
Antonio, good morning, all of you.
Morning.
I think one of the ways on the very large projects is to have the SMEs that have the expertise of parts of those projects to be subcontracted by the large companies. And the role of the clusters could be to be aware of those expertises and have the large companies seeing that, knowing who can do what.
Linking in common projects, large companies, small ones. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, but formally, that would mean to create some kind of consortia for the proposal to our governments. Do you have any?
Sorry, I was going to say that once the SME is on the consortium, the SME has to invest also. If the investment is on proportion, that's not a problem. If the investment is on equal parts, that's a problem. For the SMEs, I mean.
Yeah, I totally understand. We totally understand. Okay, is there more references of this kind of calls in other countries, in other European countries? Does anybody of you have reference on your countries? Thank you, Patrick, for the new reference. No? As usual, France is the best reference possible. Congratulations. Okay. Any question or comment from the rest of the attendants? Do you think that we should continue with the analysis of the flagships, or it doesn't make sense? It's an interesting analysis for you.
Antonio, I think it's very interesting, this analysis, but it should be interesting if we could have some practical examples that should be used for the conversation, because I think it's difficult when you don't have some examples to have the highlights for the discussion. That's my experience for that.
Yeah. Yes, the problem is that today we don't have any cluster working on Power Up with us, because I am sure that there are clusters, but they have not joining us today. Okay, so I propose to close the session now. Okay, for me it has been very useful, the information that Patrick has shared. Thank you. We will see how can we involve cluster giving us references on the next sessions. The next one is about buildings. So if you have references on your countries, please contact them and invite them to participate, okay, and to reach for us and organize their participation. Okay, thank you, and I hope to see you soon, also next Wednesday if you want. Thank you, and bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.